think we're live. Of the Crimson Throne, session 37 is in the bag. Woot woot. Moving right along. Um, let's just dive into it. You've watched 36 of these. You probably know how this works. Okay, so I needed to prep the Acropolis of the Thrall Keepers. Sort of a short little 10, 12 room dungeon with a unique feature in the middle, and we'll talk about that down at the bottom. So, reading through and sort of picking up some of the lore, prepping some different pins and stuff. First up, the conversion notes. So I still had the Red Mantis Assassins and I had Krojan already made. Carried those over from before. Krojan's kind of playing a rival role, and the Red Mantis Assassins are meat for the meat grinder. At least in this way that I envisioned and ran this. I had to make thunder callers, and I leaned into the thunder callingness. They're supposed to have these spears and stuff, and that's okay. But I figured, let's do some thunder druids. I found these kraken priests that had thunder powers already, but they had like swim speed and some flavory things. So I took all of that off, and I swapped their spells out, all their water spells. I gave them thunder and lightning spells, and they pretty cool, pretty powerful. Actually, maybe the CR was wrong, but it's a milestone game now, so doesn't even matter. I grabbed the Cosmic Horror stats. This is out of Boo's Menagerie, because there's an old god under the water, and it just kind of makes for an interesting thing. It's like they probably can't fully awaken it, but they can partially awaken it, causing these tentacles to come up out of the water and lash at people. And yeah, the more noise they made, the more tentacles they got. So I needed tentacles handy. I took the Cosmic Horror stat block and I removed anything not tentacle related, and most of like the legendary actions. I did leave the crushing one, and I modified it so that it was more that after all of the tentacles went, everybody who was grappled got crushed. So maybe not quite as much damage as would have happened otherwise, but probably so. Actually, it depends. Because I applied it to everyone who was grappled instead of taking 3 legendary actions, it would have just been 3. So that may have come out in the wash, but one way or the other, it was probably pretty close. The noise level. So what I did in Fantasy Grounds was I put at Initiative 30 a reminder to set the noise level so that it wouldn't go to Initiative 29, which was the actual noise level object monster, right? So I put 100 hit points on an empty NPC, and for all of the noise in the game, and I won't get into the details of how all of that worked, it's actually a little bit of overhead, and I'll table that for a second. But for all the noise they made, I did damage against that 100 HP, and I also set it to regenerate 100 HP at the start of its turn. So I had to have the reminder as sort of a breakpoint ahead of the regeneration, or else it would wipe out the number. But the way the encounter works is there's a table, and it talks about if you do this, it makes this much noise. If you do that, it makes that much noise. And then at the start of the round, depending on how much noise you made the prior round, you get this many more tentacles, as many as 5 more, up to a theoretical maximum of 20. But yeah, they kept making noise, so it kept popping up, and it worked well. That whole encounter mechanic worked really well. They didn't even honestly look to see what Fantasy Grounds had coded for me in advance, but I used that, and yeah, worked really really well. All right, so pens. What did I have? So obviously the notes to actually run the thing. I created the Thunder Caller. I brought over the Cosmic Horror and the tentacles and the reminders, like I mentioned. I pulled in an image of Lasala, the statue, right before realizing there was one in the book. And I don't know, I wish it was a little bit better in the descriptions of the adventures. And this one's probably quite old, so who knows who I'm giving this feedback to. But there should be the images very clearly called out. And it would really be wonderful if Fantasy Grounds would show you those images instead of just the red dragon heads. But anyway, I didn't know it was in there. I brought one over, and it turned out it's probably in there somewhere. There's the Cursed Whip +2, which you would have heard in the stream. Once that got identified, he's like, put that back. I am letting them identify the curses. Again, I'm just kind of doing this a little bit on easy mode. Just to sort of accelerate things. I don't want to get bound up in bookkeeping. I don't want to get bound up in trips to town or any of that sort of stuff. I want them to understand what they're doing and play the game eyes wide open. Um, just I just think it plays a little better. It certainly plays faster. So we've got some treasure for some areas that they've not yet explored, and then the effect if they actually do get the Thrallkeeper's Mark, which I assume they will. Very little standing in their way at this point. So I expected it to be a short dungeon delve. I expected it to be possibly too short. Honestly, in my head, I thought the party would realize the noise mechanic and therefore not make any noise. They totally did not do that. So, they made lots of noise, killed things, etc. Which turned out to be fine. The NPCs bore most of the damage. So, whether that earns them any more respect points remains to be seen. We'll see what they do next. But in general, I figured they'd pick up on the mechanic right away, and they kind of did. They're like, oh, there's a monster down there, throw it a dead bird or whatever. But they didn't pick up on it to the degree that it changed their behavior very much. So, yeah, we'll see. Anyway, that's it for 37. I will see you guys all next week. Do the things, catchphrase insert here, all of that. But yeah, we're getting there, rounding out toward the back half of chapter 4. See you in a week.